So now we're gonna actually solder the boards that we looked at a few moments ago. The first thing I'm talking about is soldering 101. I don't know if you've ever soldered or not. Basically, start with some safety things. It's over 300 degrees C, so which because you're literally melting metal. So it is hot. It's so hot that if you burn yourself, you're actually not going to feel it immediately. Generally, you hear it first, it will sizzles, then you smell it, and only then do you feel it. So, yeah, be very careful about that. Use when you're soldering, you should always do it in a well-ventilated space. Either have a fan blowing by it so you don't breathe in the fumes. This machine actually has a smoke absorber, so I kick it on, and so get the fumes out of my face. And yeah, so the solder, do not cheap out on your solder. This is actually Kester brand solder, which is one of the better companies out there. I know we've had people try to be cheap and buy random stuff off Amazon or whatnot. It never works that well. The name brand solder is worth every penny. So don't cheap out on your solder. You'll be giving yourself a really hard time if you cheap solder. So all right, so first up, I'm going to go ahead and work on this one. I'm going to attempt to solder the the pin where the inner pin connects to the tab on the back. I don't know if I'll be able to get this to take solder or not. It's two different types of metals, and there's a lot of thermal mass, so it's hard to heat up. I'll give it a shot. And so yeah, so when you're soldering, basically you want one of the things you have to do is to keep your tip clean. I prefer the little gold pads here. Some people like the wet sponges, but my preference is gold pad. So first thing you want to do is make sure your tip's nice and clean. I'm going to get the smoke absorber on, and then you have to wet the tip with solder. If you don't, it'll have a really tough time getting the heat to transfer, and you'll basically get cold solder joints if you can get it to melt at all. So I'll just get nice little melted blob on there. I'm not trying to use this solder to basically attach to whatever I'm soldering. This is mainly to transfer the heat, is the point of this one. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit the centerpiece there. I know it's kind of hard. I don't know if you can hit the flashlight button on that thing, maybe. Yep, there we go. If that helps any. And so yeah, once I get the metal heated up, I'm gonna try to. Yeah, it's a lot of metal here, which a lot of thermal mass, which means it takes a long time to heat up. Basically, when you're soldering, you want the solder to melt on the metal and not the iron tip. If you melt it with the iron, you can get it's really easy to get a cold solder joint, in which case it won't really stick, and can actually flake off. Oh, yep, there we go. That's actually sticking pretty good. I'm go ahead and mount it on there. Nice and neat. I don't know if you can see that nice shiny thing. So yep, that's the first connection. The second one, I'm going to try to see if I can get from the bottom. There's this big old blob, since it's still pretty hot. Actually, let's go off that side. I'm trying to then melt this. Basically, you know you got it right when the solder kind of wicks down into the thing. That way you know it's so. Now, I was hoping it would try to wick down onto the tab there. I don't know. You really need to remove the old stuff to do that. Of course, I don't have my little solder sucker with me, so I will not be able to do that right now. So I'm just going to try to do that a little more. No, so I'm just going to hit it from this side. Go ahead and clean the tip off again. A little more solder to make it nice and wet. think that should be good. So I'm gonna go ahead and have a look at this again. You don't want too much solder, and you also don't want too little solder. So it's fine balance between too much and too little. This should be all right. I don't know if you can see it how well on the camera there. It should be a nice little slight mound without giant globs. Is what you're going for. If you put on too much, then I do recommend heating up and grabbing a little solder sucker or something and removing the excess. Too much, it's actually a fair amount of weight, and so when the boards get slammed around, all that weight will end up causing the joints to crack again. So for this one, I took care of the little pin on the back and where the tab connects to the board. I think the board is all right. It's really hard to see. There's a small from the ring down there. There's a small trace that comes off to the side and connects to right here. If the trace was torn, because sometimes when the jack rips off, it pulls the trace with it, and so you have to jump around that torn trace if it is broken, which means you'd have to put a wire from like right there to somewhere on the tab to just jump around that. But this one appears to be all right, so I'm hoping right there fixes it. Go ahead and plug it in. No, nope. Nope. Oh, you can see what I'm. Yeah. I don't like that. It's worked for. Yeah. So, yep, this is pretty much needs a new jack at this point. Then. That fix did not work, so I got to replace this jack now, and unfortunately, I don't think I have any more with me. So this is going to be a project for another day. Fail. Moving on. I'm going to go ahead and replace the giant yellow wire, which is way too thick, with a much smaller and flexible one. You can't really see it, but yellow wire is solid, which is even worse. So I'm going to try and first up, hopefully I can get the old one off out of here. Come on. Half of it. One out. Clean the tip off. It'll be interesting trying to solder onto this resistor. Right now I'm just using the tip to try and clean off some of the old solder on here. I'm going to put more on later. It's a nice clean connection. So yep, before I do this, I'm going to tin the wire, which means just putting a little bit of solder onto it. So once you have the wire tinned, you tin the wire, and then there's a already soldered on connection. Now that means I just need to heat up these two, and they'll join together, and we're good to go. That's on there. Oh. And of course I pulled it before it cooled. Cool. Alright, that's better. And form the wire a little bit. Of course I forgot to tin the other side of the wire. Oh. I'll go ahead and leave that. I'm going to tin it now. It's always a pain to that tin, so let me go ahead and try to form that at a nice angle. Then I can. Sometimes it's easier to solder it and then snip it. Other times you can snip it and then solder it. So I think this case is looking like snip then solder. It's gonna be easier. So Get in there, push the joints, push the wire. That should be good right there. And a little more solder. Inspecting it, looks pretty good. Again, you really, especially with these surface mount resistors, you do not want too much solder on there. Otherwise, that will snap the resistor right off. And so now that that's done, let's go ahead and plug it in and see if it works now. Hey, at least one of them fixed. I'm just going to poke at it a little bit just to make sure it's not. Yep. One more time just to verify. This one is fixed. All right, 1 out of 2, not too bad. Good to go.